The Attitude Era was the greatest time in pro wrestling. We all like to cry, and sure, to a certain extent that's true. It did have some brilliant moments. But it also had racist characters trying to cut off people's penises and old women giving birth to hands. So let's not pretend it was all smiles and fairies, because it wasn't. This goes for some of the gimmicks wrestlers were straddled with too. We all want to think that no matter what characters appeared, that they all got over faster than an Alicia Fox push, but that isn't true. There were some appalling personas during this period, and some were so bad you'll want to cry. I'm Simon from What Culture, and this is 10 WWE Attitude Era gimmicks that didn't get over. Number 10, Brackus. I bet Brackus made Vince McMahon so happy when he arrived in the WWE that he did a backflip. A former bodybuilder, and it showed. Brackus would be a hit with the fans due to his ripped physique, and well, not a lot else. As you can imagine, this didn't go to plan. When he first did turn up in the WWE in 1996, he was soon shipped to ECW in order to understand what wrestling was. 12 months later, Vince and friends thought he was ready to come back, and the icing on the cake was going to be simple. They were going to throw some chainmail on Brackus, that surefire accessory to get you cheered by fans. Because who doesn't want to go crazy for a German night? Love those guys. No one else did though, and he was out the door by the end of the year, bicep curling his way back home. Number 9, LOD 2000. This is the reason I hated the year 2000. All we did is take old concepts and throw 2000 on the end, and that was apparently enough to make these new again. That is nonsense, and you know it's nonsense because it didn't happen again in any other year. Ain't no LOD 2009. It wasn't like the Legion of Doom couldn't have been adapted in another way either. They were two big dudes that beat people up. I think we can make that work, much like the WWE did in 1997. Apparently this wasn't good enough, however, and instead we updated the LOD by giving them helmets and telling Sonny to go to the ring with them, and then making them a trio by adding Droz. There were other problems here, such as Hawk's ongoing health issues, but ultimately this didn't go very well, and the new Legion of Doom were gone even before the new millennium hit. Jeez. Number 8, Beaver Cleavage. It's don't tell your friend you like wrestling time, because wrestling can be awful. But yes, in 1999, someone backstage within the WWE landscape saw Chaz Warrington, former headbanger who was no longer a headbanger, and decided he had to be repackaged. Given they had a blank slate, it's even more upsetting that what they chose was Beaver Cleavage, some creep that lusted over his own mother, and that made you uncomfortable, it made me uncomfortable, and pretty much everyone uncomfortable who saw the damn thing. It was awful. To no one's surprise, this didn't get over, because how could it? If it wasn't bad enough, domestic violence was then added into the angle, and overall it was dead before it even began. That's how dreadful the gimmick was. Mercifully, he just became a headbanger again one day, and we could all forget about this. I just can't get my head around it. Number 7, the Truth Commission. Who's up for some casual racism? Sweet, come and join the bandwagon. Because in 1997, WWE did debut the Truth Commission, a white separatist faction that was seemingly based on South Africa's very real Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Now, the group were heels, which of course they should have been, so you could argue that. That's not saying much. Thankfully, apartheid was abolished before they arrived in the promotion. It didn't take long before the gimmick was more about being a cult than anything else. It was messy from start to finish though, and even through its many guises, not many people gave a damn. Because how could you? None to give a damn about. Number 6, Marc Mero. This entry is a little more controversial as most people remember Marc Mero, but do we remember him for his in-ring work and character, or because he was the person that introduced the fans to Sable? I'll let you be the judge. Debuting as the Wild Man in 1996, he did have a cool finish in the Shooting Star Press, but it's quite clear early on that his wife had the audience's attention no matter what he did. That's why she started to slowly be worked more and more into the program. Eventually the pair split and Mero went heel, but even that wasn't great, and eventually he left the company, never to really be heard of again wrestling-wise. Was that. Number 5, Naked Mideon. What do you do with Mideon when you run out of ideas? You make him naked. Simple. It's the classic recipe for success. And this clearly must have been someone's line of thinking as Mideon, a man who had been indoctrinated into the Undertaker's ministry, just started to strip off his clothes and run through the arena as Jim Ross shouted, "It's Naked Mideon," which was a very appropriate description. Now today we look back and laugh at it because it was just nuts, but there is no way you can argue this was good or popular back then because it just wasn't. Poor Dennis Knight as well had to be a pig farmer, and then this. Fair play to him for making them work at least on some level. Number 4, Meat. You're called Meat, your career is over before it's even begun. Sean Stasiak was already on tough ground given that he came from wrestling pedigree and didn't quite have the same tools at his disposal, but the death knell was when WWE turned him into a sex slave, called him Meat, and stuck him with the female group PMS. I mean, the writing's on the wall, isn't it? The best bit, however, and what is often forgotten, is that he used to claim the reason he lost his matches was because he was worn out from all the sex. Of course you were. Meat was fired after recording backstage conversations, which is weird, in 1999, and he was never over, in any sense. Number 3, Steve Blackman. I kinda wanna contest this one because I love Steve Blackman and I still do. There's just something so legit about him, but it's fair to say that during the Attitude Era, his popularity went from decent to not that decent. Wasn't like he was stone cold. Blackman does have an amazing story to tell though. Ready to sign with the WWE way back in 1989, he was bitten by a mosquito while touring South Africa and was bedridden for 2 years with malaria and dysentery. It took him almost half a decade to recover, and not only did he do that, but he did make it to the big leagues as well. To screw being over, Steve Blackman is just an inspiration all around. He had a few highlights here and there too, and always did come across like he could kick your ass. Blackman retired in 2002 and is probably still out there somewhere twiddling those kendo sticks like no one else can. Number 2, Tiger Ali Singh. When Tiger Ali Singh was signed to the WWE in 1997, the company went all out. There was a huge jamboree at the Toronto Skydome, and the plan was to break into the Asian market using Singh as their guy. What does that remind you of? All of a sudden, plans changed though. With the rebranding to the Attitude Era, when we next saw Singh, he was no longer being portrayed as a marketable face, but was instead playing a stereotypical, potentially racist, Middle Eastern man who had clearly been inspired by Ted DiBiase. Singh and his manservant Babu used their fortune to humiliate fans, and anytime Singh would get in the ring, well, it wasn't great. This bombed and bombed big, and Tiger flew down the card before eventually being let go. Number 1, Dr. Death Steve Williams. When Jim Ross brought his long-term friend and legitimate hardman Dr. Death Steve Williams to the WWE in order to compete in the inaugural Brawl for All shoot contest, the company was so convinced he would win that they paid him the purse in advance. And if that isn't being well too confident, I don't know what is. What makes less sense is that rather than fixing the competition, because, wrestling, they made it a legit fight instead, and then Williams got knocked out by Bart Gunn. Whoops, screwed that one up. This hurt Williams no end, as he was meant to be seen as a challenger for Stone Cold Steve Austin. But how was that going to be possible when we'd just seen a cowboy tag team wrestler floor him? It wasn't. That really was the end for Dr. Death. His WWE fate had been sealed.
Gosh, can you believe that person said that about that particular video on that entry? I sure can't. But you should like, share and subscribe below anyway. And also, the people who made this video, they're right here. Go follow them and give them some love. Also, there's more content, probably above my head. Check it out. Or don't. 50-50.